Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay, switch on your video, dear. So today we're going to start with the transportation that takes place in the case of plants. Now see, for the plants, they do not have a very, you can say, well-developed circulatory system in them. So for their transportation, they have different tissues, different particular, transportation methods. Now for the plants, so that they can get the raw materials or anything that they require, the minerals and the nutrients, they get it from the soil. Because soil is the reservoir for everything that the plants require. Now, like reservoir of nitrogen, phosphorus, like sulfur, all of these things the plant gets from the soil itself. And which part is particularly responsible for this absorption or this uptake? That is the roots. So the roots are very important for the uptake of vitamins and minerals from the soil. Now, when the plant has to transfer things for shorter distances, the plant transfers it via diffusion. Quickly tell me, what is diffusion?
Ma'am, the is where the oxygen goes from a higher concentration to lower concentration.
Not just oxygen. The gases, the molecules, when they travel from a region of high concentration to the region of low concentration, that is what we call as diffusion. So for shorter distances, for smaller distances, the diffusion will be enough to transport the substances. But for large distances, like for the entire length of the plant, then diffusion is not, like you can say, suffice. So for that, transportation system is required. Now plants, you know that the plants, they cannot move from one place to another. So they do not have a lot of energy requirement as such. Okay, so since the plants are immobile, they do not move and they have a lot of dead cells and tissues in them. So plants, they do not need energy as much as like how we do or animals do. So for the long distance transportation in the case of plants, there is the presence of conducting tissues. What are the conducting tissues of the plants? Xylem and phloem. Other than calling it as the conducting tissues, you can call it as the vascular tissues as well. So what happens is that xylem is the tissue that is responsible for the transportation of water and minerals, whereas the phloem is responsible for the transportation of the food material. So the transportation of water and minerals in the plants, it takes place by xylem. And xylem is made up of 4 components: tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. Now the tracheids, they are elongated tube-like cells that have tapering ends. Tapering ends mean they are thin at the ending. And they facilitate the transportation of water. Whereas when we talk about the vessels, so they are cylinder-like cells. Again, they help in forming a channel so that water could be transported through that. Then comes the xylem parenchyma. Now, xylem parenchyma, these are the living cells that will be storing the starch, that will be storing the fat molecules, and they help in the short distance water conduction. For short distances, the xylem parenchyma will conduct the water, as well as they will be responsible for the storage of starch and fat molecules. And the last component of the xylem is the xylem fibers. Now remember that all the other components, they are the living components, whereas the xylem fibers, these are the only components that are dead. Okay, they have dead cells that no longer divide. So what it does is that it provides mechanical strength and support to the plant. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what happens in the xylem tissues, the vessels and the tracheids, all of them are like interconnected. It's like they form a water conducting channel, and as the water will move through one, it will be passing through all of the different connected channels. These channels reach to different parts of the plant wherever the water would be required. Now, I told you that the xylem is required or it is important for the transportation of the water as well as the minerals. So, what happens is that before this, you have to understand that the transportation, it is of two types. Okay, if it requires energy for transportation, it is called as active transportation. If it doesn't require energy, we call it as passive transportation. Okay, so transportation is of two types, active and passive. If the transportation is happening along the concentration gradient, meaning from high concentration to low, then no energy, no ATP will be required. But if the transportation will be happening against the concentration gradient, meaning from low to high. So in that case, the ATP expenditure or spending of the ATP will be required. So that is the two types of transportation. So firstly, when the plants, they have to absorb the ions, right? So they absorb it actively by spending energy. So they spend the ATP molecule and they absorb the ions actively. Now, as the ions, they are taken up, so ions are more, water is less, as a result of which the water which is more in the soil, it will move from the soil into the plant. And this is called as the normal osmosis of water takes place, right? The movement of water was osmosis. So thereby, always remember one thing, that when we are talking about the transportation that takes place through the xylem, it is unidirectional. Okay, it happens only in one direction. Okay, one direction means from where to where? Can you tell me?
Roots to other parts of the body.
Very. The roots, from the roots to the different parts of the body. After that, there comes the transpiration and absorption. Now see, in the plants, transpiration means the evaporatory loss of water. But when the water loss takes place from the plant's body, so water is being lost from upside, and here the plant requires more water to be absorbed. So remember that as the water gets lost from the plant's body, it causes a transpirational pull, which makes the plant absorb more water from the soil. So even though transpiration is like a loss, because it creates a pull so that the plants, they could absorb the water from the soil to the roots and then to send it to the different parts of the plant. Talking about, any
Ma'am,
doubt?
that's flaccid, right?
Flaccid?
Yeah, transpiration pull from the stomata, right? The closing of stomata only is transpiration pull.
No, that is different. Flaccid and turgid was opening and closing of the stomatal pore. But here we're not concerned with the opening and closing. We are concerned that through the stomata, the water loss is happening in the form of water vapor. So while this is happening, what will like water is being lost. So now the plant needs more water and the more water gets absorbed from the soil. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it clear? Sure.
Yes.
Now see, even though transpiration is one way or the other loss of water, but still it's very, very important for the plant. Why? Because it helps in the absorption of water from the soil. It helps in the upward movement of water, and just like how in like during the summers we sweat, and that sweat is there to cool our body surface. Same way, the transpiration cools the plant surface and it's like a temperature regulation mechanism. And if transpiration is not there, then it will be very, very difficult for the plant to absorb water from the soil. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
After that, talking about the transportation of food. So the food gets transported via the phloem, right? And you know that the food of the plant is the glucose molecule, that is C6H12 and O6. Now, this glucose transportation, it's like a long distance transportation. and it takes place via the phloem, and the process wherein the glucose gets transported, we call it as translocation. Okay, so other than the other than the food molecule, the phloem also transports the substances like amino acids that are necessary for the growth of plants. Now, same way, just like how xylem had four components, the phloem also has four components, like the sieve tubes, the companion cells, phloem fibers, and phloem parenchyma. Remember that the sieve tubes, they do not have a nucleus. Okay, they are enucleated.
Well, they do not have what?
Nucleus.
They are elongated.
They do not have a nucleus. So they are enucleated. Enucleate means something that is without a nucleus. You know that in a cell, nucleus is there. So that nucleus is not found in sieve tubes. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Yes.
Now, unlike the transportation in the xylem, the phloem transportation utilizes energy. So this is active or passive? Which one?
This is
If it utilizes
act-
energy, which one?
it if it utilizes energy, it is active.
Very good. So it is active kind of transport. Okay. So now the phloem is responsible for it. So like this particular thing increases the osmotic pressure of the tissue, causing the water to move into it. Right. This pressure moves the material in the phloem to the tissues which have less pressure. This allows the phloem to move the material according to the plant's need. For example, in the springtime, the sugar stored in the root or the stem would be transported to the bud, which has energy, which requires energy to grow. So, in the case of the transportation of the food, don't think that it is going to be one direction. No, it's going to be bi-directional. Why? Because the food could be needed anywhere. The roots can also need the food. The leaves can also need the food. The different parts, like the growing areas of the plants, could also need the food. So always remember that the transportation through the xylem was unidirectional, but the transportation through the phloem is bidirectional. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
And see, this is the picture that depicts the same exact thing. While the transportation is happening through the xylem, it is taking place in the single direction. Whereas in the case of the phloem, it takes place from like top to bottom, like that, and from bottom to top, like that. Clear? This is like the
Okay, ma'am.
major
But
difference.
what is that end walls with perforations?
End wall with perforation is like, see, these are the sieve tubes. Sieve tubes, like sieve means like how there is that apparatus through which we refine the flour, through which we do that. You know that? Like you put baking flour into it and then you refine it of the dust particles. So that's like perforation means anything that has a lot of pores present. So sieve walls, they have a lot of pores present through which it passes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, what are the components of the transport system in highly organized plants? Tell me.
Xylem and phloem
Very good. How are water and minerals transported in the plants?
through xylem through xylem
Hmm. And the direction of the flow through the xylem is?
unidirectional.
Very good. How is the food transported in the plant?
By the phloem and it is bidirectional.
Hmm. And the transportation of food has another name. What is it?
Translocation.
Very good. Translocation. All right. Okay, now you can note it down. Then we'll move forward and talk about the transportation in the case of animals. Okay?
Ma'am, can you send the notes
Yeah, I will
of
send the
the
notes.
previous one?
I will send the notes. Like the whole entire chapter, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I will send the notes. You note it down. I'll send it. Done, Inan?
Yes, ma'am. Hold on.
Done, Inan?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, little up. Can you scroll down? Ma'am, can you scroll down, please? Can you scroll down? Scroll down.
Done, Inan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you read this part also, transportation.
Ma'am, What is that passive transport along the what?
Along the concentration gradient. Along the concentration gradient means from a region of high to low concentration. Against the concentration gradient means from low to high. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. I'm done.
Also, did you understand how the transpiration creates a pull for the water to be absorbed? Did you understand that part, Inan?
Yes, ma'am. To prevent the loss of water through stomata, right?
Yeah, because like the loss of water is happening anyway. So in order to compensate for that, the plant loses the water from the top and absorbs the water from the bottom. Clear? Always remember that even
Basically,
though,
it loses the water from top, and again it takes up the water from the roots.
yes, yes. So that is why we say that even though transpiration is like a loss of water, but still it's important because it is creating that pull because of which the water would be absorbed. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. I'm done.
Done, Ina?
Ma'am, last month.